On March 2nd, on March 2nd, a drone struck one of the most important oil facilities on the planet, Ras Tanura, Saudi Arabia's largest oil export terminal, a facility that handles enough crude to fuel entire nations, gone, at least temporarily, in a single strike. The markets panicked, headlines screamed, analysis one of an oil shock that would dwarf anything since 1973. And then, 11 days later, Saudi Arabia calmly announced that full operations had resumed. High black 50,000 barrels a day, flowing again through a different route. The markets exhaled, oil traders celebrated, financial news anchors called it a resilience story, a triumph of engineering, a demonstration that Saudi Arabia has outsmarted its adversaries. They were not wrong, but they were only looking at half the map. To understand what happened, you need to go back to 1981. That was the year Saudi Arabia finished building the East West pipeline, a 1,200-kilometer steel artery running underground across the Arabian desert from the Gulf Coast all the way to the Red Sea. It was built It was built for exactly this scenario. If the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 20% of the world's oil passes, was ever blocked, threatened, or disrupted, Saudi Arabia would have an alternative. An overland route that no naval powder could touch, no drone, no missile, no naval mine could reach a pipeline buried beneath the desert. And it worked. When Ras Tanura went down, the east-west pipeline stepped up. It moved 550,000 barrels a day within 11 days of the strike. Its full capacity sits at 7 million barrels per day. Yanbu, the Red Sea terminal where the pipeline ends, was loading 4.3 to 4.5 million barrels. Saudi oil flowed, the bypass held, the engineering was flawless. But here is what the celebration missed. The pipeline ends at a port. The port loads tanker and the tankers have to go somewhere. The oil that exists Yanbu enters the Red Sea, and the Red Sea is not a safe road. Between November 2023 and the late 2025, Houthi forces, the Iranian-backed militia controlling Yemen's western coast, launched over 100 attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. 20 or more vessels were hit. 4 were sunk, not damaged, sunk. Global shipping rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope, the southern tip of Africa, adding 10 to 14 days to every voyage. Insurance premiums surged 20 times over their pre-conflict levels. Then came a brief pause. After the Gaza ceasefire in October 2025, the Houthis stood down. Shipping companies cautiously began returning to the Red Sea. The premiums began slowly to ease. And then, on February 28th, the same day Operations Epic Fury began, the Houthis signaled recension, explicit solidarity with Iran. The pause that the market had quietly started to rely on was over. As of March 18th, the pause technically still holds. No sustained confirmed attacks since the ceasefire, but the capability is intact. The weapons are loaded, and the war that triggered the resumption signal is escalating, not winding down. Let's be precise about what the Houthis can do because precision matters here. They have the Asif, an anti-ship ballistic missile with Iranian electro-optimal terminal guidance, effective at 450 to 500 kilometers. They have the Quds cruise missile with radar homing guidance and a claimed range of up to 2000 kilometers. They have smart drones that can reach targets of 1500 kilometers away. Now their accuracy is limited. Against moving targets in the Red Sea, the hit rate can roughly 10 to 12%. But here is the insight that most people miss completely. Accuracy was never the weapon, volume was. 100 attacks, 10 to 20% hit rate, 4 ships sunk, and the entire Red Sea insurance market repriced for 26 months and counting. You don't need to sink every ship. You just need to make every ship owner ask themselves, is this route worth the risk? When the answer becomes no often enough, the route effectively closes. Not because of a blockade, but because of economics. The Houthis didn't need to win a naval battle, they just needed to be expensive enough for long enough. The Red Sea narrows at its southern end into a strait called Bab el Mandeb, 29 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. The second narrowest checkpoint, the second narrowest choke point in global energy shipping after Hormuz itself. Every tanker leaving Yanbu carrying Saudi Arabia crude that successfully bypassed Hormuz through a buried desert pipeline must pass through Bab el Mandeb to reach Europe, America, or Asia going west. And Bab el Mandeb sits within the range of the same Houthi weapons that have already demonstrated conclusively their ability to disrupt shipping at will. Saudi Arabia built a pipeline to bypass one choke point. The oil comes out the other end and forces another one. The bypass bypasses Hormuz, it does not bypass choke points. Now, set oil aside for a moment because there is a second story running beneath this one, and it is worse. Urea loads at Ruwais, ammonia loads at Ras Laffan, both inside the Gulf, both west of Hormuz. These are not luxury goods, these are fertilizers, nitrogen compounds that are quite literally the reason half the world's population can be fed. The Haber-Bosch process, the industrial method of turning nitrogen into ammonia, is responsible for feeding approximately 4 billion people. Without it, the global food supply collapses. And unlike oil, nitrogen has no east-west pipeline. There is no overland routes for ammonia from the Gulf to the Red Sea. There is no Yanbu terminal for fertilizer. There is no buried artery running across the desert carrying urea to safety. Every molecule of nitrogen that leaves the Gulf leaves through Hormuz, full stop. Where Hormuz is disrupted, even partially, fertilizer shipments stop. And when fertilizer shipments stop, the impact does not show up immediately, it shows up in the next planting season. In the harvest 6 months later, in food prices a years from now. Nola urea, the benchmark price for nitrogen fertilizer, is sitting at $683. That number is not a coincidence. That number is a market quietly pricing in the fact that the molecule that feeds half the world has no bypass, no alternative, no escape route. The market celebrating Ras Tanura's resumption is looking at oil. The $683 urea price is looking at everything else. There is a concept of in engineering called single point of failure. It means a component whose failure brings down the entire system. Resilient systems are designed to eliminate single points of failure, redundancy, backups, alternative routes. Saudi Arabia looked at Hormuz 40 years ago and said, we cannot have a single point of failure for our soil. We cannot have a single point of failure for our oil. So they built a pipeline. They spent the money. They did the engineering. They created a redundancy. And it worked. When the test came in March, they passed. But resilience is not binary. It is not something you either have or don't have. It is a spectrum. And at the end of Saudi Arabia's very resilient oil pipeline, the port that loads tankers that sail through a different choke point controlled by the same proxy network. The bypass is real. The vulnerability at the end of the bypass is also real. And for nitrogen, for the fertilizer that feeds 4 billion people, there is no bypass at all. There is only Hormuz and a war and a price. Saudi Arabia solved one problem with 40 years of foresight. The world has not solved the other one at all. The pipeline works, the Red Sea waits, and the nitrogen has nowhere to go.